Maybe he got another assignment, Frankie said. In Milwaukee? Hannah didn't exactly sneer the word, but she might as well have. I know it isn't the Congo, but we do have worthwhile images to photograph. For instance, the Basilica, which was modeled after St. Peter's in Rome and had one of the largest copper domes in the world. The structure was exquisite, as were many other local churches, such as the Greek Orthodox Church designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. Frankie planned to go there tomorrow. But Charley was a photojournalist, one of the few left in an era where everyone had a camera on their cell phone and speed trumped technique. That he was still employed at 63 was a testament to how good Charley was at his job. In the last couple of decades since they'd called it quits, he'd become even more famous. If Frankie took one of his more well-known pictures onto the street and showed it to the first person who passed by, she'd bet $100 Joe Public would recognize it. Charley had begun his career as a combat photographer in Vietnam. He'd been drafted shortly out of high school, then re-upped for a second tour. Once the troops had been withdrawn following the Paris Accords, he'd stayed on, which meant he'd been there at the end, and the photos he'd taken of the fall of Saigon had landed him a job with Associated Press. From there, he had moved to Time magazine, then National Geographic, eventually becoming a freelance photographer so he could pick and choose the best jobs from each of them. Charley wouldn't fly off on another assignment without letting me know, Hannah said. Interesting. He'd done that often enough to Frankie. She wondered how long it had taken Hannah to train the asshole out of him. You still seem to have lost him. Be that as it may, Hannah said, and Frankie laughed. Hannah didn't seem the be that as it may type, but what did Frankie know? As previously mentioned, she'd met her once. The circumstances had shown neither of them in their best light. How could they, considering? Hannah had been a kid, which had only contributed to the unpleasantness, not only because she had no idea how to handle the situation, but because her age had made the situation even more of a, situation. She hadn't been too young, as in pedophile young, but she'd been young enough to really piss Frankie off. Charley had asked her if he'd fallen in love with a woman his own age, would that have been better? Frankie had punched him in the mouth. She still had the scar from his front tooth on her middle finger. She recalled holding that finger up, dripping blood, waving goodbye with it, as Hannah fussed over his soon-to-be-capped front teeth. Ah, good times. What is so goddamn funny? Hannah asked. Nothing. Frankie didn't plan to share anything more with Hannah than she already had. The woman on the other end of the line bore little resemblance to the Hannah Frankie held in her head. Soft-voiced, a bit meek, not Charley's type at all. Of course, Frankie had been as wrong about Charley's type as she'd obviously been about Hannah herself. Tonight, Hannah sounded anything but meek. Tonight, Hannah sounded a bit ball-busty. If he shows up there, would you call me? Why would he show up here? Why does Charley do anything? Once Frankie had thought she understood Charley Blackwell better than she understood anyone, even herself. She'd been wrong. But she'd have thought by now that Hannah might. They'd been married longer than Frankie and Charley had. Are you two having problems? Frankie asked. You'd like that, wouldn't you? Maybe 24 years ago, even 15, Frankie might have enjoyed hearing that Charley and Hannah were on the outs. She'd have called her BFF Irene Pasternak and chortled. But now? I couldn't care less. Hannah snorted, and irritation danced along Frankie's skin. While she didn't have any feelings about their marriage one way or another, apparently she still hated Hannah. If he shows up, I'll have him call. That work? If anyone had told her back then that she'd be having this conversation, any conversation, with Hannah Blackwell, that there'd be a Hannah Blackwell, Frankie wouldn't have believed it. She almost didn't believe it now. I'm not sure, Hannah said. You might have to, it's almost 3 a.m. here. I don't have the patience for you. That makes 2 of us. Hannah hung up. Wow, Frankie said.